So thank you guys for joining us to this new MuleSoft Meetup group. This is a new group that's called MuleSoft for Java developers. So our goal here is to more than advocate MuleSoft for you guys, but demonstrate how you guys can leverage your previous experience with Java and apply this previous experience in MuleSoft. So if you don't know MuleSoft, you're in the right place. If you already know MuleSoft, you're also in the right place. So we have a lot of content to share with you guys. Today we will start with this meetup, bring approach to building APIs using, for example, MuleSoft and SpringBoot. Tim will share with you guys some thoughts on how to develop an API using SpringBoot, and I will do the same development using MuleSoft, so you can compare both development strategies and how you can handle this in your own platform. Okay, Tim, you'd like to add more things? Please go ahead.
Yes, I think it will be a very practical session. I prepared a lot of working code, and I'm going to show you a lot of code which you usually don't see when you use Mule. So I think it will really come through very clear that in one way it's very straightforward. In the other way, you have to glue around a lot of code here and there. I hope you enjoy. We really prepared this in a very practical way.
Yes, this is our agenda. So we'll talk about something about the history, the background of Mule and Java, and then we'll demonstrate for you guys the experience in developing an API to connect to Salesforce using MuleSoft, and then your team will present you guys how to develop the same API using SpringBoot, and then we can compare this and then wrap up. And then the final of this session, we're going to have our trivia. So yes, we are recording this session. It will be available on the meetup page by tomorrow, maybe. But even the recording and also the presentation and the source code as well, they will be available on the meetup page. Okay. So in the closing the session, we'll have the trivia. So just wait for the trivia. We have 3 vouchers in this trivia game, so you can have a chance to win a voucher to attend a MuleSoft training. Okay, so thank you Infomentum as well. It's sponsoring this new meetup group as well. Thank you for supporting us to create this new meetup group. It's been amazing for us. Special thanks as well for Alex Fidon, who last year he hosted a meetup group as well, demonstrated how MuleSoft Java developers can leverage their knowledge for MuleSoft. It was amazing and inspired us to create this group as well. So thank you, Alex, and welcome as well to bring more content. This is the right place that we can share more experience about Java and everything. Okay. So my name is Guilherme Pereira. I'm integration architect at Infomentum. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil. I have been working with Java since 2008, and since 2014 I have been working with MuleSoft. I'm MuleSoft ambassador and also a meetup leader. I'm hosting this meetup group and also other groups here in São Paulo, and a new group dedicated to the Portuguese language. Okay, so thank you everyone to attending to this session. I hope you enjoy. Tim?
Yes, and this is me. My main work is an enterprise architect in several companies here in Italy. We do a lot of integration projects, and that's why we also use MuleSoft a lot to do these projects. And I'm also a MuleSoft technical instructor since almost a couple of years. I'm teaching in Italian and in English, various architectural and development courses. During my careers, 25 years, I'm doing this job as a software engineer. I've been in touch with most of the languages, and now I'm pretty much specialized in all the different public clouds with Kubernetes. And yeah, that's pretty much my experience.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Yeah, if you'd like to have to ask a question, please go to the Q&A session, and you can create your question. I see one question from Dougal. Yes, you're from Python. You can leverage some content here, and also you can start to study MuleSoft as well. We're going to show you how to create an API. So probably you'll be able to understand everything that we're talking about today. Okay. So about some backgrounds about Mule and Java. So Mule started as an open source project in 2003. Ross Mason, the founder of MuleSoft, he was a Java developer, and he was tired to doing the donkey work, as he said. And he always been working with heavy platforms, writing a lot of code, and most of them no standard, having few applications working together. So he decided to create this MuleSoft project, inspiring to have a easier way to connect multiple applications using a lightweight ESB and using standard protocols as well, and provide some connections across the application networks. In 2006, MuleSource was founded, and then it becomes MuleSoft in 2008. I don't remember the exact date. And during these years, the core has been receiving a lot of features during these years. So it's becoming one of the most important platforms used worldwide nowadays. So this is from the open source to the endpoint platform. So how it started? It started with the MuleSoft Runtime. It's Java under the hood. So everything, the core of the Mule is based on Java. It's a lightweight ESB, so you can run it using small infrastructure. It's scalable. Is based on events. Okay, the Mule Runtime has automatic thread control called Uber, so he was able to manage all the threads that you need to use during your development and when you're executing your APIs. So you don't need to take care about this stuff. Mule can handle this stuff for you. You can leverage, for example, about streaming. You can implement as well batch in Mule. So we have a lot of functionalities in Mule that you can leverage in your experience. Tim, would you like to add more things? Please feel free.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, so what to bring next? A part of the Mule Runtime, you bring the connectors. So with the connectors, you'll be able to connect with everything. MuleSoft provides more than 200 connectors nowadays. So you can connect with Salesforce, you connect with SAP, Workday. So every connector's work is a drag drop. So you just can plug and play, so you can drag it to your flow and start to use. It's very useful to create your integration and accelerate our integrations as well. So you have as well other connectors to connect multiple databases. curious providers, for example, like Kafka, RabbitMQ, AWS, Google. So you have a lot of features that you can connect. And also you can leverage using the MuleSoft SDK to extend your connector. So for example, if you don't find a connector that's suitable for you, you can create your own using the SDK. So the SDK is based on Java as well, so you can extend this SDK and create your own connectors using MuleSoft. In the top of the Mule Runtime and the connectors, we have the design and portal. So it's an important thing as well in the development of the MuleSoft. So you can have the design portal that you can create your API specifications, create mocks, publish your sets to a portal, and also create some connections with the developers. Also, MuleSoft brings aboard as well a completed platform to manage all your APIs, so you can secure your APIs using API Manager. You can monitor it using the monitor model. So you have a lot of features that you can leverage using Endpoint platform to deploy your APIs as well. To the cloud, to on-premise, to a public cloud, for example, using AWS, Google, Azure, leveraging Kubernetes behind the scenes as well. And also MuleSoft offers a cloud-based MQ called an Endpoint MQ. So you have a lot of features in MuleSoft that you can leverage in your developments. Okay, so what we are going to see today in this meetup, you are going to build an API. So this is our use case. Okay, so our API it will connect with Salesforce, so it's a contact API, and we'll develop a resource to get the contacts from the Salesforce API and transform this data to JSON. So we're going to see how we can create this API using MuleSoft, and then Tim will show you guys how to create the same APIs using SpringBoot. Okay, so how to do it with MuleSoft? So using MuleSoft, we came about the API lifecycle. So everything that we start in MuleSoft, we start from the design. So we bring the API first upload to our development. So we start to create our specification. Then we can validate it, create mocks, for example, validate it with the consumers, and then we can build it using the Endpoint Studio. So Endpoint Studio will provide us a graphical interface to create our APIs, and then we can deploy it, automatically deploy it to the cloud, for example, and then start to manage it. So for example, we can govern our API, apply some security, or for example, monitoring as well. So we have full API lifecycle covered using MuleSoft. Okay. So let's get started. I will start to develop the API. So let me switch to my endpoint. Okay. So this is my endpoint account. Okay. To start a project, I will start from the Design Center. The Design Center provides me an interface to create my API specification. So in this case, I already have one created. So in this API specification, for example, I'm using RAML, but you can use Open API specification as well. So you can build your specifications, and then you can produce start to implement your code using MuleSoft. So this is a a great platform to create your specifications, so you can start to write your specification. It provides a content assistant as well, so you can leverage some information about the specification and start to implement your resource. So in my case, we are going to implement the get resource from contacts, okay? So in my case, I also have defined a type for this contact. We can also use a fragment in this scenario. For example, I can create a fragment of this object and reuse it in the other APIs across my development. I can also include some examples to my API, and then I can start to play in my API using the mock. So behind the scenes, the MuleSoft will provide as well a mock for these APIs, so I can start to test it before to start to develop it in my studio. So in this scenario, for example, I can just insert some information and try to send. Okay, I will consume the information. If I, for example, a mail, it's a required parameter. If I not send it, it will return an error. So I can start to test my API and verify if I'm developing the according the requirements or not, and I can decide to modify. And then when I have my API designed, I can go to the Endpoint Studio and implement it as well. So here I have two examples: one using REML, another one using OpenAPI specification. So using Design Center, you can leverage these two kind of specifications in your implementations. Okay, so also I have my REML defined. Now I can go to the Endpoint Studio and start to implement it. So in this scenario, I already have an example done here, but let's start to a new one. So in this scenario, I can put a name to my API, and I will import the specification from the endpoint platform. Also import the specification and create my project. The Endpoint Studio automatically will generate a skeleton from my API. So it will provide me through the API kit. API kit is a model in the Endpoint Studio that create a skeleton of this API, and I can start my implementation based on this skeleton. So in this skeleton, it will provide for me the flows that I need to implement. So for example, I have three methods to implement this API: get, the path, and the post. In my scenario, I will be implementing on the get. Okay, so I can start to implement my API from this part. So my goal here is to integrate with Salesforce, so I can add the Salesforce connector to my project. Okay, and then MuleSoft have a lot of operations in the Salesforce connector that we can use to explore the Salesforce API, and it's the same for other connectors that MuleSoft provides. This so in this scenario, for example, use the query operation. By default, when I generate the API, MuleSoft will generate, based on the examples, a mock response. I don't need this. I can delete. So in the query operation, I need to configure my Salesforce connector. So to configure it, I will need to provide some information about the credentials. Let me copy and paste. So I will have a Salesforce developer account, okay, set up. And this information, I will be able to connect to my sandbox. Okay, and test the connection. So MuleSoft also, the connectors will also provide an interface to manage all the connections from the connectors. So, for example, I can use the basic authentication, I can use OAuth as well. And once I have a session or a token in this connector, MuleSoft can manage this token behind scenes for me. So, for example, if this token expires, MuleSoft has the ability to renew this token automatically. Okay. I already have configured the connection, so now I just need to implement the query. So the query is the query that I will use to extract some information from the contact. Okay. So once I use the query parameter, the queries, I can leverage the data sense as well. This is another important part of the Endpoint Studio. So once you define the attributes that you need to that you would like to connect from Salesforce, you can bring this to the metadata in Endpoint Studio. So you will be able to see the name of the fields that they are bringing from the Salesforce. So it's very useful when you are developing your APIs and you need to transform your data. Let's see, is in my scenario as well. So something that's missing here, it's my query parameter. So I would like to filter by email. Okay. Let's create my parameter. So my parameter it's sent by a query parameter, so I can access it. So from query parameters and then okay. So now I'm filtering my to Salesforce using the email, and I will extract only one contact per call. Okay, can save it. Now I just need to bring a new connector. It's a transform message. It's DataWeave. DataWeave, it's a powerful script language that is easy to transform data using MuleSoft. So with DataWeave, you can transform data from, for example, JSON to XML, read data from CSV or flat files, and transform your data for the format that you want. So in my scenario, I'm using JSON as output, and then I can start to map it, mapping my objects in my DataWeave. So So remember, the query returns an array, but I'm filtering it by email. Okay, so it's just, I can just drag and drop, or I can write my own data weave script as well. I already have my data weave script created. Let's use it. Okay, so in this scenario, I'm transforming the data from the Salesforce, the object context from Salesforce, and transform it to my JSON format to my API. Okay, so it's done. I would have configured everything, so I can start my project and test it locally. So Endpoint Studio provide an embedded MuleSoft Runtime, and I can use this embedded runtime to test my developments. Okay, it's running. Let me open my Postman. Let's just wait to start in my computer. Okay, it's deployed. So my API is already running in my computer. So let's try to execute a request to this API. Okay, I have an error. Yeah, probably something that I did wrong in my parameters. Yes, email. Okay, I think I got it. Okay, just put it. Okay, my where clause was incorrect. Let me save it. Okay, stop the server and try again. It's starting. Okay, this always happening during live sessions. Let me see what's happening with my studio. Okay, it's deploying. Okay, it's deployed again. Let's start the test. Okay, so now it's working. So I'm using my email to filter the contact, and then I connect to the Salesforce and get the data from Salesforce and bring it as a JSON format. Okay, so pretty straightforward. It's easy to implement, so MuleSoft provides everything that we need to speed up this development. In this case, for example, if I try to modify, not send an email, for example, it will be validated by API Kit. API Kit will provide a validation against the Runway specification, so we can make sure that we have the appropriate values to our implementation. And now I can deploy this API to the cloud. For example, I can use the Studio to deploy it to the cloud. Or I can use as well Maven. MuleSoft provides a Maven plugin that I can configure and deploy my API using Maven. So using Maven, I can leverage my implementation and build my CI/CD pipeline as well. So in this scenario, I will deploy Endpoint Studio. I can just need to create the name of the API, define the version, define the worker size in the Cloud Hub, and then deploy the application. It will take a few minutes. I already have one deployed. Let me show you guys. So as a runtime manager, in this scenario, I'm using the Cloud Hub. Cloud Hub is an iPaaS infrastructure provided by MuleSoft. It runs on top of AWS, but it's also it's everything managed by MuleSoft. So in my previous test, I have deployed this one. So it's redeployed on Cloud Hub, and I can also test it using my Postman. So this is the API that's running in the cloud, so they have the same resource, the same email that I'm sending to the Salesforce. And if you go to the runtime, you probably will see another API. It's been deployed. Yeah. So this is the new API that I'm deploying. So MuleSoft provide all the infrastructure on AWS for you. You don't need to take care about it. So in this moment, for example, it's creating the worker to deploy this API. So it will deploy their runtime in their application. So you don't need to take care about anything about updates or take care about infrastructure, for example, configuration. MuleSoft provide you everything out of the box. And also I can start to govern in my API as well. So I can have some insights from this API using the runtime manager. We also have the monitoring to have more insights about the API. So for example, I can see, for example, some insights about the infrastructure, how this API is being used, how many messages it's coming to this API, how it's performing. So, for example, in this scenario, I'm getting a response time, a good response time, the number of requests that have been done for this API. So I have a lot of information here that I can use to manage and govern my API. And also I can govern and implement some kind of security in my API using the API manager that is also provided by MuleSoft as well. Okay. So yeah, this is that I would like to demonstrate for you guys. So now I will hand it to Tim. Tim, you demonstrate to us the same experience using SpringBoot. Okay, Tim.
Yes, okay, thank you, Guilherme. I'm going to take over the screen.
Okay.
So, actually, I knew that Guilherme was going to show the entire life few minutes. It was actually a challenge to try to say, how can I do all that stuff from scratch in 20 minutes? So, of course, I cannot afford to start everything from scratch like actually Guilherme did. So I already have this prepared. So let me show this to you. I have prepared the project. Here it is. You can find it here on GitHub. So please be my guest to clone the entire project from GitHub from this address. I'm going to copy that in the chat window as well, if I can. Right, it's a bit lagged because conferencing system is really taking a toll on my machine, but this is the GitHub address. You can clone. So where did I? First of all, there was the problem of studying how to connect to Salesforce without having the MuleSoft connector, right? So I had to go to the documentation, and it turns out you have a variety of ways to connect to Salesforce. So namely, you have the SOAP API, then you have the to reload it from scratch. The bulk API is something that you use when you want to do operation with records and you need a lot of throughput. So it's designed to handle that high throughput. So you have for inject query. And then you also have this was also famous streaming of the unique attempts to create an API which is streaming based. It's a little bit more complex, but it's based on a protocol which is called CometD. This is also interesting to use. Here it is, implementation of CometD. And this is what provides you with streaming of the data like any modern situation or modern interface that you want to have. I actually didn't want to go inside those pretty much a bit more. So I've chosen to use the SOAP API. So with the SOAP, you have to take hold of the WSDL. Remember the good old WSDL file. There is not just one WSDL, right? So once you have chosen the API that you want to use, then you have to select which WSDL. So you instance, and again that it's empty, and to the setup window, you have a variety of WSDLs to choose from. Let me bring up the, it was here. This is the setup window. Yeah. It's a bad idea to run the from the same Chrome you're using to do the demo, apparently. But right, show the screen cap. So basically, you have one API which is called the enterprise API. WSDL is just here it is. You have the enterprise WSDL. So you download the enterprise WSDL. You have this huge WSDL, and usually what you do is you use the JAX2 tools to generate the stub and the skeleton that you need to create a Java client and the Java server, right? And I tried to do that, and it was just too big, right? So I used a suggestion that I found in documentation to use a tool which is the WSC tool. That is a tool that allows you to generate a jar file with all the necessary instrumentation that you need for stub and skeletons, right? So I typed in a command which is similar to this one to generate this enterprise jar file. And that creates a dependency, which is not really a Maven dependency. It's a dependency that you create accordingly to the WSDL you have selected, which is tuned to the version of your specific Salesforce developer instance. So already here, I had to do a lot of studying, selecting the correct API that I wanted, then download the WSDL, whatever. So I created this enterprise jar file. And then the next thing that I did is I had to create some way which was more or less automatic to create the connection and then share the connection everywhere in a memory safe way in all my implementations. So to do an easy thing, I created a SpringBoot service, a Spring service actually. This is something that can be auto-wired, injected in everything, in every other component in Spring. And then I use this here, the post-construct annotation. And this is going to pick up from external configuration file, which is called application properties, all your authentication thing, like Guilherme typed into the wizard MuleSoft. And yeah, this bean gets constructed as soon as the entire SpringBoot application starts. So when the SpringBoot application starts, it will automatically go into the Spring context, and it will create a connection to your Salesforce instance, and you will be able to pick up the connection with this get connection method. This is something that I made up. It's not in the documentation. The documentation is really a plain vanilla example on how you do the login, but I didn't find anything in the official documentation on how to do that in a way that is shareable within the same microservices. So I kind of created this as a single. That was one step. Then the next step is that the use case was provided in RAML format. So I converted the RAML format into OAS, and then I used a Maven plugin, which is called OpenAPI Generator Maven plugin. So you have to insert this plugin into your POM XML for your project. And then when you do the build, you have an additional step, which is the generate step. This generate step is going to parse the OAS file that you have to include into your project and create some generated code. I'm going to show you in the editor. So this is my project. Every time you run the Maven goal, Maven is going to create here in target generated sources some code, right? And this code is actually describing the contacts API that Guilherme created with Design Center. And what's actually doing is interesting design-wise, because it's based on the concept of delegation. So it's really applying the delegate design pattern. And it creates basically an interface. The interface is here. It's called Context API Delegate. And the interface is instrumented with a series of default methods. You know that starting from Java 8, in Java 8, the default keyword was introduced. And with the default keyword, we have the possibility now to create implementation code in interfaces as well. So this is leveraged to create this delegation concept. So I can use this interface directly, and you have a plain vanilla with a 501 not implemented response. And the thing that you have to do is you have to create in your main project an as a Spring component that implements that delegate interface. And since this is a service, Spring will instantiate in the context this implementation plugged in the interface. So when you auto-wire in your controller this implementation, you will be automatically switched to the implementation of the interface. And since the interface contains default methods, whatever you don't implement is actually taken from the auto-generated interface. So yeah, this is already another complicated concept. We have delegation pattern, we have inversion of control, we have injection. So we need to know pretty well what we are going to do with the Spring framework, right? And then, of course, the next step. So I more or less framed the architecture. So I have the connector. I can inject my air quotes Salesforce connector that I created into my implementation over here. And then I can use this implementation to do something, right? So Guillermo showed you that he created the query to Salesforce, and he highlighted that you have a very useful thing in MuleSoft, which is DataSense. Under the hood, DataSense already went and got in touch with Salesforce to collect all the necessary metadata, and he used the metadata from DataSense to create the query. But here I'm navigating in the dark. I have no clue about what are the real names. There is no type ahead. There is nothing that tells me what are the correct fields. So I kind of fiddled around, did some research. I went into the code of the enterprise jar file, which is the file that I created here. And by the way, here it is, you see an external reference, which is outside from the Maven dependencies. And this is another not so nice thing of the approach that I followed, right? And I went here looking for the contact data type. I really did some reverse engineering to catch the names, right? Of course, you can do that also in the official documentation of the API, or you could go into the WSDL, which is here, but it's kind of huge. I'm not going to double click on it because it takes time to open up in the editor, right? So another difficulty, right? I have to kind of do a research for this query, and it's not really correct because I missed a where here. And then if you do a where here, then of course you have to be careful that you do not concatenate the email parameter, because if you concatenate the email parameter, you are in danger of a SQL injection attack. And Guillermo, out of the box, used parameter binding. He did it very quickly, but he did a parameter binding from the query parameters into the query. So that is kind of immediate. Here, I have to remember this thing, and I have to use a different way of doing the query with a prepare query. So a lot of details, but they're very important details in the long run. So what I do here, I take the Salesforce connection from my service, and I issue the query. And then I have this get record methods. It gives me an array of objects, right? So I kind of hope that I have some kind of answer. And then you remember the fancy drag and drop wizard that Guillermo used to map the result that you have from the enterprise API, from the Salesforce API, to the contact data model, right? So he did that with data width. Very beautiful, very elegant. What I have to do here, that is really what I hate every time I have to do this. Really, I hate it and hate it and hate it again, that I have to manually connect all the different records. Writing, yes, Java code. And what about streaming? What about pagination? This is just one record. What if I have 1 million records? None of these problems are addressed here. They are addressed out of the box with MuleSoft and with DataWiz, because DataWiz is Scala-based, so it's natively talking about streaming. And this is actually so already done for you that you don't even realize that it is so smart. But here you really realize it, because what if you want to do streaming here? What if you want to do pagination here? You have to do that yourself. And then there is all the story about error handling. So I just gave you a hint here about how to do error handling, the different errors that you might encounter. You have to do that again and again and again in every service. And this is just one. This is just the get single email. This is just one of the different points you might implement in your API. So there is a lot of blood to be shed here. This is just really the tip of the iceberg, right? And now here I create a response entity, and I create a response entity with the contract response data contract data model. This is what is auto-generated from the Maven API, right? So that is basically. So of course, we need to create a suitable PUM file that compiles everything, runs the tests because you want tests, and then you probably want to Dockerize the application because you want to deploy it, and then you want to scale it, you want to load balance it, you want to observe it. When you're using microservices like this, nowadays you do that in Kubernetes, and Kubernetes needs basically a containerized image. So what I had to do is creating in the PUM file, adding a few more plugins to run the tests, and then to create the container. So let me check that I should have my Docker for Windows up and running. Let me show you. So what I do is, so it's going to be Maven. Let's do a clean, then install, and that will do the tests, move all the dependencies. Remember, I have the Docker file to create the image. Then I have this enterprise jar file that I have to move inside. So it has to copy all the dependencies, then it has to compile, then it has to create a jar file, and then it has to use the Docker file to create the image. So I'm going to use the Docker Maven plugin here. So I will add an additional goal with Docker build here. So Maven is starting up, and it's going to create a super jar with all the dependencies. And since it's a Spring Boot jar, it will be so it's going to start. Okay, that's a few warning because it's complaining that I'm using that enterprise jar file from outside. So that's not a recommended practice. So hopefully it's going to speed up a little bit. So while we're waiting for the compilation, actually, let me see. Yeah, let's living get doing that. Yes.
To answer some questions.
Yes.
That it's arriving.
Yes.
I have some others that we can answer live. So, for example, this can be a good one. What's the benefits of making API in Mule? Like we be able to build API in SpringBoot. What's the benefits?
What's the benefits? We have a comparison table at the end, right, Guilherme?
Yeah.
So I think that we are going to answer to that question pretty much in detail. We are going to compare all the steps that we are doing that you did in Mule, and I'm trying to do without Mule, right? So, but basically we can already say that it is speed and easiness, right? Easiness to use, and you already get out of the box some very complicated things like streaming, like using different kind of APIs for the Salesforce Connector, so advanced connectors, and you have out of the box containerization, you have monitoring. So we're going to touch all those things as soon as I'm finished here. So, okay, let's wait that it compiles. While it compiles, I have already actually one container compiled, and I'm going to show you here. When it is compiled, it is converted into a Docker image, and then Docker image into a Docker container so that it can be pulled into your Kubernetes environment. We're happy here. And this is already, I did this experiment 2 days ago. This is the containerized image, and this is your Spring Boot microservices, which was delivered by public Docker Hub repository. It is actually very easy. Oh, right, it lost connection. It's actually very easy to pull the image into your Kubernetes environment. I'm going to demonstrate. Okay. So let's wait for that to restart, and let's see how our compilation is. So now here you see it's generating the OpenAPI interface, and it's also generating all the stubs and the skeletons and the interfaces that is going to compile. So it's compiling. And in the meantime, let's see our Kubernetes situation.
Okay, it's not picking up. Okay, yes, it is.
So this is actually a cloud environment that you can use to experiment with Kubernetes. It's very easy to use. And I put the link if you want to try it out in the slides as well. It will take some time because I think the video conferencing system embedded in Chrome, it's really preventing this from working. But I have everything in screenshots, so I'm going to show you the screenshots. Okay, so that is the OML, this interface. This is all the implemented endpoint, so auto-generated interface, inject the connector, hardcode the query, fetch the record, handle the errors, prepare the response, do the mapping manually, right? So the code, so I implemented the auto-generated interface, and then I have to override the interface default methods for each endpoint. In the implementation I showed you before, so I'm here creating the right query. I did a lot of research for that. Then I don't have any streaming or paging, so probably have to use a much more complex API. Then I have to do this nasty data mapping that, yeah, nasty to do in Java. All the Maven automation by myself. And I have to use this Maven clean install Docker build, and in the end it compiles everything and it creates a container. Then you need Kubernetes, so you need to know about Kubernetes. So basically, there are in 2 commands I am able to expose the service in a clustered replicated way. So you do this, you take the image from the registry. Then you expose the service through a load balancer, which is given by the Kubernetes edge system. In the end, half is that you have your service here as a load balancer. And when you have this, then what about monitoring and logging? You have very few things actually already out of the box in regular Kubernetes. Can use is the dashboard. Dashboard in Kubernetes gives you a little bit of information about CPU usage for every pod. You can click into deployment and you can see how many requests you have for the deployments, but you do not have a lot of information that you need API-wise. So average request or the difference between the responses that you might have, 500, 400, 501. So you miss all the API analytics stuff. So on top of this, you probably need to set up the usual Prometheus and Grafana stack, but then again, you have to configure everything. Then for logging, you have the Elasticsearch log/Kibana stack. Then you need to think backing up everything with Velero, certificates, security. So it's a lot. So in the end, it took me nearly 4 days to make this work. And you see that there is a lot of technology involved, and still the result is ideal. It's more a proof of concept, something that you can bring in production, because I miss really stuff to create a solution that can be enterprise grade, right? So a lot of technology, there's a lot of time, lot of knowledge, to make everything. Right, so just
See if it compiles.
it's still running the test. So sorry, really it's slowed down by the conferencing system, but you see now it's running the. I can hand over this to Guillermo now, and we can do a little bit of a comparison of what I did and what Guillermo did step by step, and just have a look at this. So Guillermo, over to you.
Okay, thanks. I think you need to stop your.
Yes.
Okay. So it's the comparison table. So for example, what we did, I did in MuleSoft and what Tim did in SpringBoot. So for example, generate the connector, generate the skeleton, the stubs, everything is also provided by MuleSoft by the connector. So you don't need to handle this. On the other hand, if you go to Spring, you need to create a skeleton using a lib, for example, or something like that to create the stubs, and all the resources necessary to connect with these API. So this also answered a question from Mohamed Haider Haza in the QA. So this his question was, let me find. What is the equivalent of Salesforce Connector in Spring? You don't have an equivalent connector in Spring. You need to generate the stubs and then implement and then models the functionalities for the to your connector. Okay.
Yes, it's even Guillermo, it's even more complicated than that, because you have at least 4 different APIs. You have the partner API, you have the enterprise API, you have the batch API, you have this streaming API. So you have to choose that.
API,
and it's very complicated.
Salesforce, you have a streaming API, so you can connect directly with the stream events on Salesforce, and you can start to develop your integrations using streaming as well in Mule. So another task is API designer. So MuleSoft offer the design center and the API kit. So in the design center, you'll be able to create your specification using autocomplete. So it's easy to specification. It's easy to create your mocks. It's easy to validate your API. On the other hand, for example, using Java, you need to go, for example, using external application, for example, Swagger.io, for example. So you don't have a specific platform in Java to generate this kind of specification, or you need to generate using annotation. That's not definitely API first approach. Okay.
Yeah, you could do something like, I tried to do a little bit of API design approach with the generator plugin, but and it actually works. But you've seen that it is very complicated, right? It involves a lot of knowledge about design patterns. It's very convoluted, right? It works, but yeah, you really need to understand all the intricacies of this plugin and all the different artifacts that it generates. It's really complicated. With the API kit, it's really straightforward. You go and just do the scaffolding and off you go.
Yeah, service implementation, same things. To prepare everything in SpringBoot, develop everything, so you can leverage the connector that provide the operations. We can also have the MuleSoft stream as well. So you can transform the data using data weave, and also you can implement error handling soft as well in a few steps. DTO mapping this data weave, data weave is definitely the answer for this one. So data weave, you can XML, JSON, CSV, flat file, you can use it for a lot of use cases. And using this in Java, a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
Depends on the kind of transformation.
I love DataWave. It's a fully functional language based on Scala. So you really have streaming and scaling capabilities with just a few commands under your fingertips. So it's really something. It really takes you literally 1 day to learn, right? And with that 1 day that you spend to learn it, you really save so much time trying to do the same things in Java, actually. So it's really worth it. I love it.
Yeah, and for DevOps, it's also the same approach using Spring or Java or MuleSoft, for example. So you have Maven plugin for both cases. You can integrate it with your pipeline if you want. So everything is integrated. What's missing? So what's missing in
our implementation?
Yeah.
What we still have to do, because we are just at the beginning, so we cannot really sell this consultancy, Guilherme, because we are missing some crucial things to go to production, right?
For sure. For example, security. Yeah, we haven't implemented security. For example, in my case, in MuleSoft, I haven't used it. For example, configuration properties or security configuration properties. Hiding, for example, you can safely hide in your properties that so you cannot expose, for example, the name of your username and the value of the token in your API, for example, and same thing in SpringBoot API gateway. So I haven't implemented any kind of security here, but MuleSoft also provided an API manager out of the box, so you can configure your policies and apply to your API. And the other hand, for example,
this is tremendously useful, Guilherme. API gateways now really are the thing. In every case, you're using MuleSoft, you're not using MuleSoft, you have to use API gateways now for cross-cutting concerns, security, as you were saying. And the good thing of API Manager is that you can mix and match. You can have some SpringBoot microservices. You can have some MuleSoft microservices. You can put a proxy application that you create with API Manager in MuleSoft in front of both. That works very nicely. I love that as well. And you can manage them and do all the analytics from the Endpoint platform. Works like a charm. Very good.
Yeah. Performancing. So we haven't take care about performance in our implementation, but leverage a lot of functionalities in Mule to leverage this kind of stuff. Logging. So in MuleSoft, you can centralize the logging in the platform as well. So you can externalize all your logging that you are consuming in your API to external platforms. For example, Splunk or LL Key, for example. So you can export everything that you need for external provider. So it's kind of things in Spring you need to work manually or configure, had some configurations to do. Monitoring. So Endpoint Platform offers a model, call it API Endpoint Platform Monitoring. So you can monitor your APIs out of the box. So you have everything, the insights, metrics from the API. So same case in Spring, you need to look for a third-party platform to leverage this information. Okay. Anything else?
Yes, the last one is Docker image maintenance. This is actually a huge problem that we are facing in many of the companies I'm consulting with. We create a lot of containers for microservices, rolling our own images, starting from your Alpine or Ubuntu or whatever, right? But then you have to remember that these images, they go stale very quickly, and you have to ensure safety and security of those images as well. So you have to keep in mind that all your Docker files, all your images, you should update them. You are responsible for the security of the base image of the container. So what we did is we actually had to create or to purchase an external registry scanner, which is a gadget that every time you push your Docker image, it scans the image and warns you about security concerns and everything. And there is Endpoint Runtime Fabric. With Runtime Fabric, you can create, well, MuleSoft gives you already tuned base images in which you can just inject your Mule application. And you don't have to worry about that as well, because, yeah, the base container image is coming from MuleSoft itself, and it's guaranteed to be updated. So that's another headache that you won't have, and you will have. Usually we have that. That's a big problem. Yeah.
Yeah, so to wrap up, so what's the pain points, that we found when we are comparing this kind of experience? So for example, you need to use external libs to create your connector, like we said. So for example, in the case of the Salesforce, in my case, MuleSoft, the connector provides out of the box a connection configuration, so I can connect using OAuth or security token I want. And the MuleSoft connector also can maintain the session alive automatically for me, so I don't need to take care about this in my development. So if I'm developing in Java, for example, I need to create a token in OAuth. I need to take care about this token. I need to verify if it's expired, and if it's expired, I need to renew it. So it's kind of stuff that you need to take care when you're developing.
Absolutely. That's another very difficult thing to do, and without having a proxy to do that. Yeah, very hard thing to do.
And friends, for example, using the experience in implementing in MuleSoft, you can drag and drop your connectors, so it's easy to create your integrations. So it's a low-code platform. You don't need to code too much. You can code. For example, you can extend connectors using the SDK. You can call Java classes directly in the Mule, so you can do this kind of stuff in Mule, but normally you don't need to do this in your day-by-day activities. And also the connectors. I think the connector is the other thing that makes difference when you're implementing using MuleSoft. For example, the SAP connector provides a lot of functionalities to connect with SAP. That is difficult. So you can, using, for example, the SAP connector, you can call directly using the RFCs. So it's totally different when you integrate using this direct connection, comparing, for example, when you need to use the another approach. For example, using Java, you need to create a lot of other stuffs to implement the connection with SAP, for example. And also the other connectors like Salesforce that we demonstrate, we have a lot of other connectors that can speed up your development using MuleSoft as well. Okay. Any other consideration, Tim?
Well, what are my favorite projects? Well, considerations. So when I was challenged, please, Tim, do that again in SpringBoot, I said, oh my, right? Because I'm so accustomed in doing that stuff in Mule now. It was kind of stepping back in the past, you know, really. And Guillermo knows because we were chit-chatting while preparing the meetup. And he was mocking me. So how's it going? And I was saying, so I was cursing in all different languages. But I actually did it. But yeah, I really realized, well, I appreciate MuleSoft even more, you know. And yeah, CloudHub as well, and monitoring, and API Manager, those are all beautiful products. So in the end, what I really recommend when we want to do big integration projects, enterprise-wide, it's really not worth anymore to have an approach which is starting from scratch from the code, right? Yes, it can be useful to use some code to make some hybrid microservices or a hybrid microservice system, so you can have some SpringBoot microservices and some MuleSoft microservices. But really, when you have to do a lot of integration, of course, a product like MuleSoft is really going to give you a tremendous boost and you concentrate in engineering your application network instead of cursing on the code you are going to write.
Yeah, for sure. So what's next? Please stay online because we already have our trivia. It's your chance to win official MuleSoft voucher to attend an official MuleSoft course. So okay, so if you would like to start your career in MuleSoft, you can subscribe right now, for example, for the free MuleSoft course. So you have a free MuleSoft course. It's self-paced, so you can do whatever you want. So if you can click in this link that I will show in presentation, or just get this QR code, you can subscribe right now for this free course and start to study MuleSoft. Okay, so go ahead if you'd like to change your career from Java to MuleSoft or whatever the technology that you're working on. You can learn MuleSoft. It's easy. Okay, share your thoughts on social media. Please give your feedback for us as well. At the end of this event, you can answer an email with your feedback. It's great for us to improve this group as well and bring more content for the next meetups sessions. Okay. And if you have any questions, you can directly send an email to meetups, mulesoft.com, and you can input your insights about this meetup as well. Okay.